Japanese officials continue to monitor radiation leaks into ground and seawater near the crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant. Here in the U.S., scientists also continue to monitor kelp beds for radiation from the fallout. But just a few miles from Fukushima's power plant, surfers are riding the waves. San Diego journalist Kimball Taylor went to Japan to find out why and wrote a feature article about it for the August issue of Surfer magazine. Kimball, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you said you were surprised to hear some of the surfers were back in the water. How many are surfing near the power plant?
Well, estimations I get from local surfers is that about 10% just quit surfing, 20% moved as far away as Okinawa or Osaka, and about 50% eventually returned. They didn't surf for a year, 2 years after the event.
Now, you asked surfers about radiation levels in the water. Aren't they afraid of being contaminated with the radiation?
Well, that was my perspective coming from the west coast of the United States. We were just thinking radiation, radiation, radiation. But when I got to the area and I started talking to local surfers, many of them said, no, we just don't think about that.
So radiation wasn't an issue. What was an issue? Do they have other concerns?
Well, what I didn't really conceptualize before I went there was that in a small area, 17,000 people died from the tsunami. So there was respect for the dead and for that loss built into it. And I was talking to one surfer and I said, well, if you don't think about radiation, why didn't you surf for a year? And he said, because of the ghosts at the beach.
Being the people who died in the earthquake and the aftermath.
And it wasn't the way that we might think of an apparition. It was when you go to the beach, you see all this debris. You see socks, you see children's toys, you see family photos.
So you still see that stuff. And why are they surfing there, though? Why are these surfers saying that the 50 or so % going back in the water? They think it's okay?
Well, it has to do with the culture. Mainly, for the most part, the elderly in these communities don't want to move. Either they can't, or they can't readjust, and their children, they have to take care of them. And so if they're going to take care of them, they have to remain. And if they remain, they just decide, hey, I want to live my life. I want to be able to have fun. I don't want to stress, and I'm just going to continue to do the things that I did before.
Now, we briefly just saw some pictures of the area. It's been 3 years since the 9.0 earthquake. Describe for us a little bit more in detail what the beaches and the neighborhoods in Fukushima still look like today.
Well, everywhere you see reconstruction, that's the biggest going concern there at the moment. But when I first went to the beach, I thought, oh, look at all this grassland. That's nice to have before you get to the beach. But then I turned my head left and right and I saw these slabs that were cleaned of their houses. And by seeing the number of slabs, I knew how dense the neighborhoods actually were before the tsunami. And that's when it really sunk in what had happened there.
And that's why you had to clear that. Now, you're a surfer. Did you go in the water?
No, I didn't.
How come?
Well, the whole point was to surf, and so we're going along the coast. Imagine going from, say, San Diego and driving up towards San Onofre and checking all the surf spots. But the water's 40 degrees, there's snow flurries on the beach, and I have my little Geiger counter, and I'm walking along and I'm measuring tsunami trash, and it's pinging and ticking and all of this stuff, and I just looked at the surf and I thought, nah.
Not joining in that day.
Yeah.
What are some of the lingering concerns of the people still living in Fukushima?
Well, the event is not over. There's an estimate of 400 tons of contaminated groundwater coming through underneath the Fukushima Daiichi plant every day. And some of that is leaking into the basements, and TEPCO, the company that owns the plant, they're sucking in that up and they're putting in these tanks. And they don't know how to clean that water. And each tank represents about 10% of the radiation of the initial event. So 10 tanks is the complete event. And so they have thousands of tanks that they don't know how to clean. They don't know what to do. All they can do is build more tanks and keep sucking up that water. So this is, excuse me, this is not over by any means.
If you had to say, and this has to be we have to end on this, your takeaway from this experience in visiting Japan and watching these surfers and watching this community, what would it be?
It would be that how we react to devastation is cultural. What they have chosen to do in Japan is completely different than I think how we might behave.
How so? How might we behave? differently?
Well, I mentioned a lot of people decided to stay in these neighborhoods and these towns that were affected because they go generations deep in each little pocket. Whereas here in the West, we're maybe only a couple generations deep, and if something had happened at San Onofre, I imagine that a lot of people would leave, and the tourism would be destroyed, and it would be much more traumatic, I think.
It sounds like you have a lot more to say, and I know you do. I want to let folks know they can catch Kimball Taylor's complete story on the August issue of Surfer Magazine. Kimball Taylor, thank you so much.
Thanks.